So we know this invasion will fail just based on 6 fundamental problems, okay? So even if you don't really know military strategy, these 6 problems will tell you exactly why American ground troops cannot succeed in Iran. First of all, this is not Iraq 2003. So when you tell these soldiers, we're going to invade Iran, what do you think they're going to say? Europe is going against this decision completely, okay? They are publicly saying, we will not support a ground invasion of Iran because they know it will fail. They know it will create a refugee crisis that will flood into Europe. And here's what American resources have to accomplish. 500,000 soldiers minimum to occupy a country the size of Iran. That's the low-end estimate from the military's own invasion planning documents. In 2003, used 150,000 troops to occupy a country 1/3 the size with 1/3 the population. Iran is bigger, more populous, more militarily capable, and far more unified than Iraq ever was. Where do you stage 500,000 troops? Iraq won't allow it. The Iraqi government, now Shia-dominated and closely aligned with Iran, has already announced that American forces will not be permitted to use Iraqi territory for staging an invasion. Turkey, a NATO ally, has made the same calculation. Erdogan isn't risking Turkish cities getting hit by Iranian missiles to help America invade Iran. The Gulf states are publicly neutral and privately terrified. So American forces would have to stage from aircraft carriers and from the limited bases they still have access to in the Gulf. Which means the logistics chain, the supply line that keeps 500,000 soldiers fed, armed, fueled, and medically supported, runs across thousands of miles of ocean and hostile territory under constant threat of Iranian missile and drone strikes. That's not a difficult logistics challenge. That's a logistics nightmare that gets worse every single day the invasion continues. And the soldiers know it. Which is why morale, before the invasion has even begun, is already collapsing. Iran is 1.6 million square kilometers. That's huge. Bigger than Iraq and Afghanistan combined. You need constant supply lines. Food, water, ammunition, fuel, medical supplies. All of this has to be transported constantly. And guess what? Iranian forces will target these supply lines. They will ambush convoys. They will make it impossible to maintain logistics. Okay? So the question is, if everyone knows this invasion will fail, the soldiers know it, the American people know it, why is it happening? What's the real reason? All right? The answer is the military-industrial complex wants this war because they want to burn excess money that's been printed. Let me explain this, okay? The American government has printed trillions of dollars over the past few years. COVID stimulus, Inflation Reduction Act, all of this money flooding into the economy. But this creates a problem. Too much money chasing too few goods equals inflation. Okay? You spend it on something that destroys the money without creating productive value. When you build a missile and then you fire it at a target and it explodes, that's money destroyed. When you build a tank and it gets blown up in combat, that's money destroyed. War is the perfect mechanism for burning excess capital. You understand? The military-industrial complex, these are the defense contractors, the weapons manufacturers, the private military companies. They make billions in profits while the money gets destroyed. Okay? So the elites who benefit from this system are pushing for war. They're bribing politicians. They're funding think tanks that write reports saying we need to invade Iran. They're paying media to create war propaganda. They're using their influence to make this happen. And they don't care that it will fail militarily. American soldiers are not stupid. They know this war is unpopular at home. What are they fighting for? To protect Saudi Arabia? To protect Israel? That's not a motivating cause for American soldiers to die for. Okay? So you have soldiers who don't want to be there, who don't believe in the mission. That's a morale crisis. And when morale collapses, armies collapse. The Zagros mountain range covers the western third of the country. The Elburz Mountains dominate the north. These aren't rolling hills. These are peaks above 4,000 meters with narrow passes, limited roads, and terrain where armored vehicles can't operate effectively and where air support has severely reduced visibility. Iranian forces have been preparing for this invasion for 20 years. They know every valley, every choke point. They have pre-positioned weapons, caches. They have underground bunkers. So American forces will be walking into traps constantly. Ambushes in narrow valleys where you can't maneuver. IEDs on mountain roads where there's no alternate route. Sniper positions on high ground where they can see you but you can't see them. This is a nightmare scenario for any military, okay? Iranian forces don't need to fight you head on. They just wait until you're in a vulnerable position, moving through a narrow pass, crossing a river, stop for the night, and then they hit you with everything. RPGs, mortars, machine guns, IEDs. They inflict maximum casualties, and then they disappear into the mountains before you can respond, okay? And you can't chase them because you don't know the terrain. By the time you organize a response, they're gone. This happened in Afghanistan for 20 years. It will happen in Iran, but worse because Iran is bigger and more prepared. Okay, remember, inflation is already, people are struggling to survive. And now you're telling them, we're going to spend trillions more on invading Iran. They're going to lose their minds, okay? The protests will be bigger than Vietnam War protests. And it's not just anti-war activists. It's mothers who don't want their sons dying in Iran. While the government will try to suppress the protests, they'll use media propaganda. They'll call protesters unpatriotic. This is unprecedented in American politics during wartime. Usually the vice president stays loyal publicly, even if they disagree privately. But J.D. Vance is breaking that norm, and once he breaks it, others follow. You start seeing military generals doing interviews saying, we advised against this. Intelligence officials leaking reports saying, we warned this would fail. The whole administration starts fracturing, all right? This is a political collapse happening in real time while the military is trying to fight a war, okay? Now, let's talk about what Iran does in response to a ground invasion, okay? Israel gets a lot of its water from desalination plants, these factories that turn seawater into drinking water, and from the Sea of Galilee reservoir. These are critical infrastructure. If you destroy them, Israel runs out of water in weeks, okay? We've seen Iranian missiles hit targets in Israel before. So if America invades Iran, Iran will strike Israel's water infrastructure. Israeli citizens will flood the streets demanding their government do something. They will demand the war end. And they won't just protest in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They will go to America. All right? Israeli Americans, and there are many of them, they will lobby Congress. They will demand that America end the invasion because it's putting Israel at risk. Okay? You'll have Israeli Americans with dual citizenship yelling at their representatives, you started this war and now my family in Israel has no water. End this now. You understand? This creates enormous political pressure. American politicians who have always supported Israel unconditionally, suddenly they're getting screamed at by pro-Israel voters telling them to end the war. Okay? This fractures the pro-war coalition. You have Republicans who supported the invasion because they're pro-Israel. But now pro-Israel voters are anti-war. So what do? They start wavering. Some will switch to opposing the war. We need to end this to protect Israel. This is a political nightmare for war planners. The Kurdish forces, remember America has been arming Kurdish groups in Iran, trying to use them as proxies? The CIA has been working with Kurdish militant groups in Western Iran. Groups like PJAK. The plan was to use them as allies, to have them provide intelligence on Iranian positions, to have them fight alongside American forces. The CIA gave them weapons training money, okay? See, Kurdish groups in Iran have been negotiating with Tehran for years. And when it becomes clear that the American invasion is failing, these Kurdish groups make a calculation. Who do we want to be our neighbor after America leaves? Iran. So maybe we should be on Iran's side. And Iranian forces use this intelligence to set up ambushes, okay? American soldiers walking into traps because the people they thought were allies are actually working for the enemy. This happened in Afghanistan with the Taliban infiltrating the Afghan National Army. This will happen in Iran, but faster because Kurds are more sophisticated. All right. America has walked into a strategic disaster. Every single element of this invasion is failing. Militarily, it's impossible. Politically, it's collapsing. Economically, it's devastating. There is no winning scenario, okay? The only question now is, how long does America stay in this trap before withdrawing? How much money has to be wasted? How much domestic instability has to happen before the government says, enough, we're done? You understand? Because the outcome is inevitable. America will lose this war. The only variable is the cost, all right? And here's the really tragic part. Everyone knows this ahead of time. The soldiers know it, the generals know it, the politicians know it, even the people pushing for war know it. But they do it anyway. Why? Because the system is broken. The incentives are wrong. The people who benefit from war, the elites, the defense contractors, the military-industrial complex, They don't pay the costs. The soldiers pay with their lives. The American people pay with their economy. But the elites, they profit. Okay, so when you see this invasion happen, and it might happen soon, remember these 6 problems we talked about today. So again, the key is understanding that geography, logistics, politics, and incentives all point to the same conclusion. This invasion cannot succeed. It's a trap. America is walking into it with eyes open. And we're going to watch it unfold over the next few weeks and months. Okay? I know we covered a lot. I know there's a lot to take in. But we will explore each of these issues in more depth as events develop and really understand what's happening on the ground. All right? So, any questions?